I like the idea of like zombified Oompa Loompas
Yeah.
running at you, going, and you're like, oh my god, they're not dancing anymore.
Tiny and terrifying.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the Idiots 3 RPG podcast, and we are playing Pitch Slap, the competitive tabletop design show where we pitch ideas for games and promptly tear them apart like rabid wolverines. My name is Jack Stone, and with me, I have...
I am AJ. I am not Jack Stone.
I am Duncan. I am neither AJ nor Jack Stone.
And with those introductions, these unlucky two will be putting forward their game ideas, and I will be awarding points based on fun, design, and novelty, as well as one additional special category, which for this episode is customizability. We'll also be working with an additional restriction for this episode, where the games must be within the survival genre.
Mm-hmm.
But that's enough of that. Let's get started. You two, roll initiative.
Alrighty.
I'm going to take a D20. Oh,
I'm also going to take a
the
D20.
first fair initiative.
Because it makes sense we both have the same dice.
Yeah, it does. You're right, AJ. It does.
Aha!
I got 19.
18?
Oh,
God.
You
No,
lost.
you both got 19.
We both
That's
got 19.
both 19.
Oh,
Yeah, but I can't read numbers, so I guess Duncan wins.
I was just about to say,
Yeah.
oh, you lost by 1 point again. Oh.
Oh,
Hush.
hush.
Oh, like last episode.
Okay, so that's Duncan's.
Well, I'm
starting.
happy to go first. I'm
Okay.
happy to go first.
Ladies and gentlemen,
So this...
Mr. Dunkey.
Okay, class. This is my survival game. I'm gonna set the scene. I like setting the scene. I've written a little spiel. I'm not just gonna wing it this time because
Set me, daddy.
set me, daddy. All right, here we go. My game is titled Oxidised Metal.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oxidized Metal.
Oh, I see.
It's-
I see where you're going. It took
called
me a moment, but yes.
Oxidized Metal. So each player. So this is a GM-driven kind of classic style RPG with your stats and characters and stuff. And we'll get into where it greatly differs from like a D&D clone later, but just know that GM blah blah blah. So players awake on a shore very far from their home. That's how this game starts. The idea being that they have fled their home via a raft over the ocean, thinking that there's going to be a world that hasn't ended somewhere else. Little do they know, they've just found a much worse place.
Oh dear.
In Oxidized Metal, it is a post-apocalyptic survival RPG. The idea is that you start with nothing and you must scavenge for everything. You must scavenge for weapons, clothing, food. We're going to get into nutrition soon. Food and water. You need to, if you want to live somewhere and have places to work on your stuff, you have to build a base. And all of that is how you're going to survive this awful wilderness.
Cool.
So let's start at the customizability. I'm going to go straight into customness. So my idea for this game is that there is nothing predefined.
Oh.
The only thing that is predefined... No, I'm talking about items, nothing. Clothing, nothing. Base materials, maybe the GM's got an idea of what a base could be built of, but if it's going to have stats or whatever, then nothing's predefined. If you want to include magic in the game, I've not made rules for it, but I think it would be cool to have like post-apocalyptic magic. No predefined spells. All knowledge is gone. This is your fresh spawns in the truest sense. So instead of relying on a list of items the GM can choose from, the idea is that the players find, or more importantly, make whatever the fuck they or the GM want, and the stats are sort of determined at the time based on what is either found or what is made. So if you make an axe out of 2 bits of wood, then you know that the stat should be pretty low.
Right.
If you make an axe out of metal, or better yet, you find an actual fire axe, like a proper axe, then the stats should be better.
Okay, so let's say I try and build a fire axe out of sand.
Well, you'll probably fail. In the event that you don't, it'll probably be terrible and break very quickly.
Okay.
So are those stats controlled by rolls or by the GM?
Now, I actually haven't figured that out because I wasn't sure and I wanted to bring it to the table to discuss.
Yeah,
so
rolls are like the classic way of doing that, where roll a d4, those are your stats for X or whatever.
Yeah, so you could maybe do it like you have all of the range of dice, so from 4 through to 20. I guess you go higher, but I'm trying to think of dice that people will probably already have. And then you so if you're making a crappy item, maybe you roll a d4 to get the stats. Or if you're making a better item, maybe you roll a d20 or something like that.
Yeah, you could have different levels of item and just use different dice.
And how do the stats of the item apply to the world? If you have a 3 axe versus a 4 axe,
I'll tell you. Actually, I wrote it down because I thought I'd forget. And lo and behold,
he wrote it down.
I did.
Preparation.
So I think that each item, I should say, should have 4 applicable stats. The first would be durability. So this game is one of the big core things players must always remember is what's called nutrition. We'll get into that a bit later, but nutrition goes down over the course of the game and you must top it back up. Mm-hmm. Each item, the usable item, has its own version of nutrition, which is of course going to be durability. So you're not just swinging an axe willy-nilly. You have to think, okay, I'm swinging this axe at, I don't know, some kind of mutated rock golem, that's going to take more durability from the item than if I just swung it at like a person, And so you're almost like spending durability to use the weapon, and if you don't repair it, if you neglect it, it's going to break and you're going to lose it.
Right.
That makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so we got durability. I think.
You said so they've all got all the items have 4 stats. So what's the nutrition value of an axe?
So an axe doesn't have nutritional value. What I'm saying is
not with that attitude.
Well, if you're desperate enough. No, an axe would have durability, which is the item version.
So it can have
nutrition.
any of the stats, but not necessarily all of them.
No, so the 4 stat, I've not finished the 4 stats. So
okay.
we're only talking about one.
Finish me.
So I will. So it would be durability. So durability is how long the weapon will last before it breaks. And in the same way, nutrition, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail, might clarify for you, is essentially how long a human can last before it breaks, if you think about it, in terms of eating and consuming water.
Yeah.
A weapon would have damage dealt, or whatever the equivalent is. So I guess if it's like clothing, it might have like an armor value or like a radiation protection sort of value. I think there should also be a sort of I've been calling it wieldiness. So like you could make the biggest, most awesome, elaborate gun, but it might be, if it's hard to use, it should be hard to use.
Usability. A good way of dealing with that would be is similar to what D&D does, which is each weapon has a different roll for damage. So a dagger does D4, short sword does D6, a long sword is D8, and I believe a great sword is D10. You could have different, at the GM's discretion, they could say, oh, well, a wood axe will get you like a D4.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
A stone axe will give you a D6. Something along those lines. And all of your like ways that the item interacts with the world
is done on this dice.
Is done on these dice.
I agree. And that's coming, I was kind of thinking that as well. I didn't want to be too D&D cloney, but D&D does have some very well-established and useful rules.
It's been around for decades, after
Exactly.
all.
And I think while I have tried to stay away from D&D in a lot of aspects, that is one thing I think could be quite useful. I don't know...
There's a reason we keep coming back to D&D. It's because,
it works.
It really does work.
It works. Yeah, and so I don't know, I guess there's going to be a lot of GM discretion, like either GM discretion or dice rolling to get the initial stats. I feel like there's going to just have to be...
I mean, here's the thing. Do you want a straight value for the item? To say, okay, this is an 8 axe. It does 8 damage every time you use it, regardless.
No,
or do you want to
definitely not.
introduce randomness?
No, it should be random.
Dice?
But I'm thinking in terms of like its
you
durability.
could have something like maybe the skills of the characters. If one of them was a mechanic, he can make this stuff better. One of them was a woodworker, they can make things out of wood.
Buff.
Maybe you like roll, flip a coin, whatever, to see how well you build it. So
Yeah.
you get you roll for how well you build it, and you get a buff for, you're a woodworker, you're making something out of wood, you get an extra 4 points, and then that's your durability of it. That can make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because then you could send particular people to do particular
Because then
stuff.
durability almost becomes like the item's level. You know, how characters level up and get stronger.
Yeah.
It's almost like the durability then becomes almost like the weapon level. The better you are, the more hardy a weapon you can make. And if you're not good enough, the more complex materials are going to be out of reach for you. And that's one benefit to leveling your character up or trying to choose like a crafting kind of guy, is because you want to be able to access higher level stuff.
So, to bring it back to kind of basic questions,
Sure.
So far we've kind of been describing a GM and a player.
Yes.
How many players do you see this working with?
Normal. The game will probably work best in your 3 to 5 range. Because I think
it's where most games work.
Especially this type of game. In my head, I thought you could put the players into quests through interacting with like NPCs and stuff.
Okay, so let's say we're washed up on the beach and we've built a small base somewhere near the beach.
Yep.
We wake up one morning. What do you imagine people doing? What's the next part of play?
Well,
'Cause I assume we have to find food, find water, make more shit.
Yeah. So there's
How does nutrition work?
Yes.
Obviously a good
So
question.
know that.
the way I see nutrition work is the same as what we talked about with durability. So with durability, if you want to use the item, you have to sacrifice durability points based on how you're using it. Same with nutrition. So you have you're a human. You require nutrition. I've not separated liquids from solids because I think that's going to complicate. They both do the same thing as far as health is concerned, as from like a game mechanic in my mind. So I've collected them into the same stat.
Mountain Dew is just as nutritious as Doritos.
Exactly.
You've heard it here first, guys.
Yeah, you start with X amount of nutrition. Maybe at the start of the game you don't have full because you've just been on a raft, just for the sake of setting.
That makes sense. You got to scramble, get your food quickly.
Exactly.
You got to prioritize, do we dig a trench to sleep in or do we go get food?
Exactly. Do you sleep out in the open or do you prioritize something else? Yes. And as you perform actions, each action will require a bit of nutrition. A lot of it will be small. So if you want to, if you want to craft your axe, it's going to take time, a bit of energy, but not too much. So it's probably just a small amount of nutrition.
Right.
But if you want to flee like a long distance or go on a massive hike or put up walls in your base, these are going to take more energy from your person, your character. Therefore, your nutrition should deplete faster.
How do you decide things like that? Like, how much energy does it take to build a wall? Or build a meter of wall versus 5 meters of wall?
I have an idea for that.
Go for
And
it.
in fact, I have an idea for the materials as
I
well,
love it.
because I realize that with the various materials that you have in various settings, there may be some that aren't super easily defined. Like, we can deal with wood, metal, stone very simply. We can say, well, wood's weak, stone's stronger, and metal's best. However, if we're doing something in a sci-fi kind of setting, they may be saying, oh, well, you find a crashed ship that has ultra metal on it, and that's super strong. So what I was thinking is, rather than... So the players can customize their items and equipment as much as they like, in terms of, oh, well, this is made of wood and this is made of stone. But for the GM, what they can deal with is have a table. So, and it's quite a simply defined table where it's like, okay, very weak, moderate, strong, very strong, extremely strong.
Yeah, tables definitely don't break the flow of a game at all. Having to consult tables.
No, you just
every
no. That's
5
all.
minutes.
No. All the GM does is say, okay, wood. They arbitrarily decide. They say, okay, cool. That's very weak for the purposes that you're intended to put this item to. For a boat, it might be strong. For an axe, it might be weak. They say, okay, this is weak. This is now a D4. It gets this much. It gets this range of durability affected by this much player skill. The same with nutrition. It says, okay, cool. Is it something that you're adapted to eat? Is it something that's very large? Is it something like it has a series of questions where it's like, okay, watermelon, that's got plenty of nutrition because it's got hydration and it's got some vitamins and all that sort of thing. Oh, human flesh, well, that's going to give you some nutrition, but it might make you sick. So something along those lines. Those kinds of tables, it means that you don't have to constantly come up with ideas for...
Yeah, but then we're losing the customizable
No, you're not.
nature of it.
No,
We're
you're not.
You could
Not at
create
all.
your own table, but that could take quite a while.
Not at all. Players can say, well, I make this out of... I make an axe out of a human flesh. I'm gonna make
Ah,
a
human
bone
flesh.
axe.
I like this. Very Cronenberg.
I'm gonna make a
into
bone.
this.
I'm gonna make an axe with a severed human arm and a stone axe head. The axe head
Yeah.
is strong, but the human flesh is very weak. So you go somewhere in the middle if you want to consider the item as a whole.
Yes.
Or maybe you think, okay, cool, the axe head's going to survive if the durability runs out, but the human flesh isn't. The player's item is still 100% customized. They're still running
yeah.
around with a fucking arm with an axe
Yes,
head
the
attached.
point of the customization aspect of this game is that it should be player driven. And if we can embed more solid rules that still allow for utter creativity, that sounds awesome. That sounds exactly what we should be doing. So maybe for like a very strong item, you get to roll a d20 3 times, and that's your durability. So it could still be really weak.
Yeah.
If you've screwed up, but you could get 3 20s and have like an item's going to last you many playthroughs.
Yeah.
Or maybe you build it out of wood and clay, and it breaks very quickly. So maybe you get to roll like, I don't know, 3d4s or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think the specific dice we use is just arbitrary.
Yes.
But the
So
concept.
you get the item that you want to use, and that's perfect for your character, whether that's a skull axe or a exquisitely crafted like yew longbow. But it is yours, but it is based in something solid, something that's not arbitrary. So that because then if the GM is like, they could favor a particular thing and disfavor something else when it shouldn't be that way.
And I think there's room for I think it's important to consider that the player's intent matters. So if you're using a bone needle, that's very suitable for the intent there. Like,
Yes.
bone needles have been lasting for a very long time. So
Yeah.
bone is a very suitable material, so you might say, okay, that's strong.
Yes.
However, if you try and use it to make
an arrowhead.
bone arrowheads are
Yeah.
also very powerful, but like something that's, I don't know, you try and make a bow
Yeah.
out of bone. Bone has definitely been used in bows, but if you try and use a femur and just like fire a bow with it, that's not very suitable. So you consider it a poor or weak construction.
It'll snap like straight away.
Yeah,
That's all up to the GM, isn't it?
Yeah,
to
it
decide
is.
how
Yeah.
effective it is.
it is. It does require the GM to have certain amount of knowledge, but the player can kind of say.
It is kind of the GM's job to say no, isn't
Yes,
it? You can't
it
say,
is.
I make a machine gun out of these phalanges and a
Well,
femur.
see,
You can't do
The
that.
beauty
you
of
have to do
this,
something reasonable.
and actually the beauty of this game is like, if you can justify it, especially with your character's skill. So if you can justify making a machine gun out of human body parts and like a bit of gunpowder you found and a car battery, you should be able to do that if your character could do that. And if you can justify it to the GM.
My question would be, what about the more complex things that a player might want to make? What if a player decided, I'm gonna make gunpowder out of crushed bone and a bit of sand? Do you just say no, that can't work?
I think you should. I mean, I guess it'll come down to the GM. If magic is involved, you might get away with more
Sure.
flexibility.
You could have like an alchemy
Yeah.
thing come into it.
And maybe that's how you get true freedom into it, is add magic so you can skip over some of the laws of physics. But you can't make gunpowder from pebbles and human flesh. We're very fleshy today, but pebbles and human flesh, it can't happen because that's not what gunpowder is. But yeah, maybe if you can alchemize it.
Fun fact, rotting human flesh does create sulfur, which can be used to make black powder.
Oh, here we go.
Jack, bring his hobbies to the podcast again.
Don't check my freezer.
So yeah, maybe magic then is actually a necessity, just so we can.
I think that entirely depends on like how you could go for very realistic, or you could just go really wacky. Like I guess that depends on who you've got in the GM, because I guess that's where the customizability of it comes in. Is you can make anything you want out of that scenario. If you just washed up on a beach and you know you're going to craft some stuff, but you can have some really weird shit happen, or you can make it. You keep it very tame. You can only make specific things out of wood and bone.
Yeah, and I think
that have been established.
This is a game you should play multiple times with the same character so you can see them grow. Like, because when you first wash up on that beach, you're going to be making wooden spears. You'll be lucky to have a bow. You're going to be trying to make beds from grass and shit like that. But if you play for multiple times, everyone's like getting their skills up and learning new things. Suddenly you might actually have like a proper metal or stone base that's not impenetrable but much harder to destroy.
Okay, Yeah, that's my next question, and I'm gonna move us on here. Competitive or collaborative?
Collaborative. It doesn't really matter if the GM wants to tell a competitive story. My idea when designing it was that it would be a story-driven game.
So run us through an example, how you see it, an example start following into kind of a quest kind of deal. So
Sure.
you wash up on a beach.
Yeah.
What are the mechanics of that actually happening?
So
I'm wondering how a day works.
Yeah, tell us an average day. So
Good,
they
'cause
wake
that's
up and a day.
Yeah.
So let you wake up. All players wake up on the beach at the same time. The first thing you're gonna know is what is around you and how you feel. And how you feel is going to be hungry, and what is around you is going to be beach and perhaps some kind of wooded area, forest. I think that's probably the best place to start because it's more immediately obvious how you can craft things to survive. Wood, fire, tools, great. So your first day is going to be establishing where you are, perhaps establishing relationships between the characters if they didn't know each other.
Cool.
Establishing who's got what skill and starting to...
How is that determined?
Character creation. So that's one of the few things that I've kind of taken customizability out a little bit, in that you don't just make up. So I've got a list. Well, I've part of a list of skills, but the intention that there would be a very long list of skills. So while you can't say I make up this skill and that's my skill, you will have an option from a wide range, so you can at least be the character you want to be, trying to cover all bases. So you wake up, you establish who can do what. Or maybe you don't, maybe you just start chattering, but duties will need to be divided in some capacity, or maybe you stick together. That's up to you. You probably don't see the smoke at this point. Your first job I think the GM should be prompting, you guys are fucking hungry. And so that is going to get the players thinking about, how do we get food? Maybe there's boars in the area. Well, you can't just attack a boar with your fists because no one's capable of defeating it. So how are you going to defeat the boar? You need spears or a bow. Now you're thinking about the crafting element as well.
Okay, so
How does hunger play into it? Like, have you guys seen or played Twilight 2000s?
Negative.
It's a super complex survival-driven game, which is what was it? It's the fallout from World War III, and I think it's based in Poland. And they have very specific phases. Like, I think the day is broken down to like blocks of 4 hours.
Right.
And you've got certain blocks where you can go out and do stuff. Like, how does getting hungry or running out of energy, like in that one, I think you spend fatigue points, or you run out of fatigue. How do you imagine a day working?
Well,
and yours, like, how do you get hungry? Why do you have to go get food?
in my mind, the lower your nutrition stat, the more of a penalty you should receive to performing actions. So there's a consequence to not feeding yourself, and if you get to 0, you should perish, or some kind of catatonic need emergency sort of state if you don't want to knock a player out. That way, there is a very real consequence to not feeding yourself, because your game's only going to get harder. And if every time you do an action, you have to spend nutrition points to do it, even if it's a very small amount, you're still making yourself more hungry by doing bigger, more active things. So hunger is kind of, I think over time it'll become a bit easier to deal with.
So it's hunger instead of fatigue, sort of.
Well,
they're the same thing.
So you have
Basically.
2,000 nutrition points, and you spend 200 to chop a tree down or something.
Yeah. So it's
because
like
in Twilight 2000, I think you have to eat like 3 kilos of food, and you've got fatigue and stuff, and it's really complicated. So I like that you've only got one stat.
Yeah, I wanted to make it simple because in my mind, survival games are hard enough, and especially if the GM's going to be throwing adversity at you, the survival mechanic shouldn't get in the way of fun. It should just be a fear at the back of your mind. And over time, as your player progresses and your party progresses, it should get easier to deal with because you have become more skilled at dealing. But it's going to make that first few nights real scary stuff. The first quests you want to go on, if you want to travel, you're going to be you got to think about your personal resource management. Like, okay, we're traveling a long distance. Maybe the GM's like, the weather's fucking hot and the sun is direct and there's very little cover. You got to cross some kind of like wasteland. Maybe the GM's gonna be like, if you cross that, you're gonna lose X nutrition, which means you got to think, cool, I need to bring food and water with me.
Or craft a hat so it's not so hot.
Perhaps, yes, something that will sort of debuff the loss of nutrition.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So the very act of existing in this game is also an element of problem solving, like a puzzle. You've got a resource that must be managed all the time. At first, it's going to be hard. Over time, it should get easier because you have your hat. You've already made it. Maybe you've got sunscreen you made out of some kind of like
I made the
oil.
sunscreen out of bird guano and my droppings.
Yeah, exactly. Or
So guano and guano.
Guano and human guano.
Guano and Guano, my favorite legal firm.
I heard their shit, but there we go.
Hey.
So maybe later in the game you've actually constructed a wagon that can take all your food, and it's got like a big water barrel on it or something like that. These things should get easier over time. Now the GM will still have to force adversity on you. Perhaps the wagon breaks and you lose all your water. That's like a sudden thing that they can just drop on you, and that's the GM's discretion if they choose to or not. I guess it depends how fast the story's going or how like confident the players are. You might want to make it easier or harder. But I figure if players are super buff and they're like, fuck yeah, we've got armor, we got full-on rad suits, we've got a wagon that's got all our food and water and like mutated two-headed mules carrying stuff, we're all on horseback, the GM can be like, cool, I'm stepping in and I'm going to fuck all of that up. You'll still be able to survive it because you're super buff and you've got your armor, but something's going to
Yeah,
hiccup.
my concern would be, what's the point of players progressing if the GM just arbitrarily decides to, all that progress you made, fuck you. Now you're back to square one.
Well,
You can just have that sort of built into the story. So you're going to go across this abandoned wasteland, but you have to prepare for the unexpected. It turns out it's not abandoned. There's actually an underground, civilization of people who pop out and rob you that way. Like that's not an uncommon thing that you get fucked over
waylaid.
by just by random encounters.
And it could be a plot in and of itself. What if you get robbed, all your cool shit is taken, or maybe your base, here's something a bit more realistic in this sort of world, maybe your base is raided, they blow the doors off, you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. The doors are blown off, some of your most valuable shit is taken, maybe you were even like beaten to death, not death but beaten as well. Death would be the end of the story. Well, now you've got a quest, go get your shit back, and maybe you can't do it because you just lost some stuff. Well, now you got to get more stuff. I think I hear what you're saying, that it's kind of frustrating to lose your stuff, but is that not part of a survival game?
Totally.
Is to be confident, especially one in this oxidized metal world.
Yes.
Isn't it part of the plot of the game to be too confident and then lose your shit? And then you have to start from scratch.
I think you definitely have to, as a GM, sort of force them to go out and do stuff, because you could just like sit in your base, get better and better and better and better, level 99 yourself, and then just blast through everything else.
Yeah.
Just grind and then get too good. But I think you definitely need to build in some way to force people out and do stuff.
And that's the thing about the post-apocalyptic setting, is the GM can kind of just do what they want. If someone's staying in their base too long, raid the base. Or maybe the next time they're going to do something boring, you just be like, cool, you're getting raided now. There's going to be a brief combat fiasco that they can't win. And then the bandits disappear with some of their coolest stuff.
Right.
And that's going to force the players out of their cave.
Speaking of, how do you see combat working? Is it turn-based? Is it...
Yeah, I think I've not gone super different with combat. I think there's enough other complexity in the game. I think combat should be based on the stats and the dice rolls that have been determined by what you've crafted and who you are in terms of your skills. So that's pretty standard or fair stuff.
One thing I've been thinking of, which I see is one potential weakness for it, just because of how the game is built, of you have to make every player survive. So you got your big goal at the end, and it sounds like you're thinking it'll take quite a while because you want to see people leveling up, and one session probably isn't enough. What if someone dies on day 2 of like a month-long quest?
Then they get a new character, I guess. Maybe the party...
They wash up on the beach and they're back to zero.
That's a classic tabletop
Yeah,
thing
I mean,
to do.
the point...
It does, but then, you lose your character, though.
Well, it happens. Well, that's the point. It's a survival game. You're supposed to survive. If you fail at that one basic element, maybe play a different RPG. But if you want something that's tough, and if you want something where you have to be alive, not just because you joined the game, but because you're keeping yourself alive, then you have to accept the potential that you might die. But at the same time, you're going to see your nutrition coming down from a mile away, you know? And so you have the chance to prepare. If you don't prepare, it's kind of your own fault.
Mm-hmm.
And the GM, if it's the GM's fault that you die because they made something too hard and you couldn't prepare, then it's the GM's fault. Maybe there needs to be some kind of like, you didn't die, you 0 nutrition, but you're not dead because I fucked up. That's, you know,
You're just in a coma or something.
Yeah, because that's not fair. It wouldn't be fair to put the players in a situation where they couldn't have possibly prepared enough food. Like crossing the desert at level 1 is probably not going to happen because you don't have the.
If they insist on doing it though,
well, that's
let
their
them
fault.
die.
Yes, but if the GM makes you cross the desert because that's where the bandits went, that's probably unfair. But then, hey, maybe that's part of the quest is you need to level yourself up to be able to cross the desert. Maybe that's your insurmountable objective.
So I actually don't have too many questions, so I do have a comment, which is...
Give me a comment.
Which is something I'm very fond of with this game, is that a lot of tabletop RPGs, you need or often need more than... You need a number of players. You need at least 3, preferably more. This game, it strikes me as a game that you could legitimately play with one person.
It's true,
and one GM.
You could.
And if you were really sad... You could be yourself as the GM, and you could have a set of tables that you refer to. It's like, okay, I want to chop down a tree. That counts as strenuous activity. I lose 400 nutrition. And off you go. Here's the thing, is that especially in relatively small countries like New Zealand, it can be somewhat difficult to find lots of people. And in a D&D game, you need like at least 4 people plus the GM to have like a proper party, at least in my experience. Otherwise things start getting a little bit wonky. With this, because the mechanics are relatively simple, where like you do this thing, you lose nutrition. Don't lose nutrition or you die. Here's the crafting mechanics, you just roll a die. Come up with a story or find someone else who has come up with one. The mechanics are so simple that it's not that big a deal, but if you play it with just between 2 people.
And I think this is more a hallmark of the genre so much as this game specifically. Survival lends itself to a solitary playthrough. Now, I don't know if I would recommend playing it. You are the GM and the player, and you're just on your own at a table. But like, if it's just you and your mate, or you and your partner, or whoever, yeah, survival games work when you're on your own. In fact, it's even scarier when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
If you get raided or a fucking wolf is chasing you, and you can't call on your buddy to shoot them with the AK and like flank them, that's much scarier.
Yeah. It is fun to play with other people. Look at games like 7 Days to Die, Rust, or Minecraft, or all these other games. Like they lend themselves to playing in clans. Unfortunately, that does have the result of people that when there are more people, they dominate everything. But in a game like a tabletop, where you know that there aren't any other player clans that are going to cheese the game, and the only other people who are going to raid you are NPCs that hopefully the GM has balanced.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It
gets the best of both worlds, where you're getting the survival mechanics, you're getting collaborative gameplay, you're getting a great deal of freedom, especially with these crafting mechanics you've described. I actually really like how simple this is and how it works.
Yeah, man, I kind of want to play it. Like,
I kind of do.
It does sound very free and open. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. I don't want someone to have to buy the rule book, now buy the book of monsters, now buy this and that, just to have a game and have choices, or to Google for 3 hours to get your choices. No, hell no. You be like, cool, you're in a forest. What do you want to build?
Yeah. And, okay, cool, you want to build a wood shack. That's strenuous activity and the material is suitable. Cool. Roll a die.
Go nuts.
Like, you literally just need a few tables.
It's like 2. It's like type of activity, type of suitability of material.
Yeah.
Probably job done. Plus, add that to your crafting stat
skill,
or whatever.
And that's it, done.
And if you're useless at wood cutting, you're trying to chop down a tree, well, then
it might take you more nutrition.
Yeah.
Or it might fail.
Or you'll get a shittier product.
Yeah. No, games where you just get on with things are good.
Yes.
It's good. I want to do this. Cool. Worth this and this. Done.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
And like, while there are tables, and you're right, tables can halt gameplay temporarily. If they're limited but used, if there's like 2 but you use them all the time, you'll just learn them. You know,
I've just been I'm put off tables by books, which are just a bunch of tables, and you have to there's a machine gun nest. Turn to the page for a machine gun nest. No, this
No,
one's
this is-
this one's just a nice little rubric of find
Yeah,
this,
it's
find
literally
that.
the only thing that
Yeah.
I can see that being a problem with is if the GM suddenly decides, oh, okay, cool, I want to make a knife from a bone or a knife from a stone, right? They have the same stats because they're both moderately suitable for that task. They're both D6, but stones are way easier to get a hold of. So why would you ever make a bone knife?
Because the character probably simply chooses to. And
Yeah,
that's the
maybe.
thing.
Maybe it's a role
You're
play
just a
thing.
psychopath.
Maybe,
yeah.
or maybe it's something else, or and the tools
They,
that
they
you
could
need.
they could be a stoneworker or a butcher, and then you're better at making one or
True,
the
that's
other.
actually a really good point.
That's
Yeah.
a great
The
point.
background
Yeah,
comes back
that's
in.
a great point. Excuse me.
Cool. I actually have no more comments on here.
Lovely.
I've been writing down.
Well,
here.
I love all the shower of compliments. I mean,
Yeah, I'm enjoying
happy to receive more.
Yeah, sure. AJ, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, sounds fun.
Duncan,
Sounds
anything for you?
You know what? My closing statement is, let's play. This sounds like a cool game.
Cool.
I surprised myself.
Cool.
Let's go to commercial.
The next time you're buying bacon, look through that window on the package. I'm Sarah Beck, Consumer Meat Specialist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. All bacon packages must have a transparent window so you can see a representative slice. And chances are, if you check the window, you can get the kind of bacon you like. Bacon with a high proportion of lean is obviously a better buy. Bacon with the lean distributed as streaks throughout the slice will be more attractive and crisper when cooked.
Oh, wow. That was some great deals. Let me tell you guys.
I bought 3.
I bought 4.
I didn't buy any, but I will when I get my next paycheck.
I've had to return 2 of mine, but the customer service hotline was great.
I had to take a mortgage out in order to buy mine.
It's worth it. It's
Yeah.
worth it.
My wife has left me and my kids are dead, but definitely worth it for those great deals. Speaking of great deals, let's move on to AJ's offer.
Hi guys, I have a great game to offer you today. I have come up with a game, but the main thing I wanted to do was create a mechanic. Your theme of customizability. The main thing with something that's customizable, I find you need to not have it very complex. As soon as you get complex, there's less and less things that you as a GM or a player can control and change for whatever setting or type of character you want. So I went for simplicity, something like a very simple way of playing the game, and something you can just plonk over any kind of story you want to do. If it's, you want to do one based around car racing or, I don't know, boxing, the movie Ratatouille, anything you want. So, here's my system. So, you have 6 stats, and they can be anything you want depending on what you want your story to be. So let's say this isn't my game, but let's just make up one right now. We're going to make name a Pixar movie, Jack.
I literally can't think of...
Wall-E.
Wall-E, cool. So we're doing Wall-E the game. Quite good for the survival genre, actually.
Yeah.
So what kind of stats do we want with Wall-E? Let's say, instead of just one robot, you're a fleet of these robots. You have to find garbage, get rid of the garbage, repair yourselves, that kind of thing. What kind of stats do we want there?
Durability.
Durability, cool. Durability.
Speed.
Speed, very, very good. You might have to get away from rabid robots. So yeah, speed, durability.
You're gonna need strength, the lifting power of your little robot.
Yeah, because there are a very different kind of robots in the
Indeed.
Wall-E universe. There's only Wall-E on Earth, but let's say this is slightly alternate Wall-E, where they've sent down different
Multiple
robots that can do different
yeah.
things. So strength,
Technical skill.
technical skill.
Like being able to repair themselves.
Yeah, crafting, technical skill. Yeah. What else we got? Maybe something like size. So you got big robots for big jobs, small ones to get into small gaps. Because you need to clean those little crevices.
Yes, you do.
And let's go with, I don't know, health, fuel, something like that.
Wouldn't that be durability?
Durability I see as like durability will be health, maybe fuel, because if we want to make this a survival game, that's what robots need.
Yeah, sure, fuel.
Cool. So we've already got it. We're already making a game. You start with 5 in each category out of 10. Cool. And the whole gameplay, no matter what kind of game you built, is based around the rolls of a D10. So there aren't any enemy stats or stats for particular tasks. Is that most basic where you roll a die, you want to roll something that's lower than whatever your score is. So you got a big score, you got more chance of succeeding.
Right.
Cool. Makes sense?
Okay, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
That's the whole thing. So you start with everything's a 50-50 in the beginning. What you can then do is pick up 8 points from any of your stats, move it to another stat. And I've tested this, and I don't think you would tend to move more than 6. So yeah, That's how you do it. So that's how you create a particular character. So let's say...
If you want to be... So this is the start of the game. So if
Yeah,
you want to
very
be
start.
hyper speedy, you can just lift it out of, I don't know, size and strength and put it into fuel and speed.
Yeah. So let's say we start with 5 in each. Let's take 3 from strength. We'll add to speed. So then you've got 8 speed. We want to add some more into fuel. We'll take 2 from size, put onto fuel for a total of 7. Cool. You can already see we're getting balanced throughout the game, and that's kind of up to the players, maybe communicating with the GM to make sure you've got a spread, because you might want to set particular challenges that get teamwork involved. You might want to, if you've got a tiny, very fast robot, you might want something where, I don't know, it's being chased by rats in a maze, and it has to get away from them. Maybe someone else is helping them through the maze. Some kind of challenge like that. So you just make the stats up as whatever you want. That's up to you guys and the GM to decide what kind of challenges to make you guys face.
Okay.
Makes sense so far?
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yep.
this you can just pick up plonk on absolutely anything. Not just a survival game. I think you can make this work for anything at all.
So this is a character creation concept.
Yeah, it's a character creation mechanic for just any game you want, but not really just character creation, because these define how successful you can be in the game as well. So you're facing off against a rat. It doesn't matter what stats the rat does. It's entirely based on, your durability, strength, whatever, how you get, whether you succeeded or not.
Right.
That's all
so,
it's based on. So it's just dice rolls, and you increase and lower your chances.
So can you improve these stats during the game, or do you just amend them at the start and then that's your character?
I hadn't figured that out.
Okay.
Developing your character, leveling up, that's always good.
Yeah.
But I hadn't figured out a way to do it with this, because I want to go for absolute simplicity, and then we can build it up from there. So maybe let's have a think about it. How would you do leveling up or increase stats in this?
So this is probably a one-shot RPG. So it's just like a
I was
simple
imagining
block.
the game I've made based on this is probably a one-shot thing.
Yeah. So what if, rather than leveling up the stats, what if you could find items that did it for you, and if you lost the item, you lost it again. So maybe you find like a better
Yeah.
battery or something like that, or
Oh,
like a
better battery, and that gives you more fuel.
yeah,
Yeah.
or that sort of thing, and that is like a temporary buff, but you might lose that maybe if you fail.
And that makes sense for something, especially something like fuel.
Yeah, and maybe if you suffer a big loss at durability, maybe your battery breaks and you back down again. So then you kind of got floating stats, which could be quite interesting.
Yeah, true. Actually, for things like durability and fuel, because what do we have? Speed, strength, technical skill, not really size. Size maybe. But for durability and fuel, that's not something you roll for, I guess. That's just something that, you take hits on, and then fuel you just run out of as the day goes on.
Yeah.
And you have to go find
so
fuel.
different stats take hits under different circumstances.
Yeah, I'd say definitely. If you try and do a feat of strength against, another robot that's gone rogue, and, you're trying to fight it, make it into garbage, maybe you don't succeed on it, you lose durability.
Okay.
And you have to try again.
And what makes this in particularly suited to survival games?
The mechanic, you can sort of, like we've set up durability and fuel. So fuel can tick down, I don't know, it could tick down every single turn you take, and you could have robots that get used more often because they've got more fuel. So they can go out and do more in the game. There are some that you just reserve for big tasks.
Okay, so this is intended... Sorry, I misunderstood what you said at the start. So this is intended for you to rapidly create lots of different characters.
Yeah, as many characters as you want. It's sort of just to develop a game around your different skills. So we've gone with WALL-E. You could have taken any Pixar movie or anything at all. Like, if you want to be based on bikes, different kind of bikes, you could create stats based on that. Basically, if there's an area you're passionate about creating an RPG around that no one has, this is a really quick way to just create stats, bash it together and see if it works. And then you get balance out of having to, you can't just be great at everything.
You've got to sacrifice something to be better at something else.
Yeah,
So-
and also takes out the randomness of just rolling for abilities. You can strategize it and build your team. And then GM creates challenges to bring everyone into it.
So how do you see this skill being used? Like, how do you decide what skill is used? Does the player say, "Hey, I want to avoid the rat, so I'm going to use my speed skill"? Or is
Yep,
it a
or
case
you
of, "I
could-
want to avoid the rat," and then the GM says, "Use your speed skill"?
I think you can decide your strategy. I'm going to run away from the rat. Or maybe you're a really tiny robot, and you can zoom between its legs. So then that'll be a size roll. You can sort of go for whichever strategy is more suited to you. Yeah. Or if you've got a really big size, you can decide to stomp on the rat or just straight up run it over. And so you roll for that. So you decide your strategy based on your stat is how I imagine it doing. The GM, they can always just say no if you're being ridiculous.
Well, I suppose that if you know your stats, the player can just say, hey, I want to do this. And the GM's like, cool, roll for size or roll for speed. Because in that way, if you disagree on what stat should be used on something that it could be either.
True, and that's common in things like D&D, where they say what they want to do, and then the GM decides what kind of role.
Yeah, it's GM's discretion what what skill is applicable. And that way, if you disagree between whether it's a feat of strength or a feat of technical engineering, it's the GM's decision.
True. Yeah, that works. Yeah, I could see that working. Like if you're trying to fix a door, you go, okay, I'm going to fix the door through brute strength, or you could say, no, that's a technical role. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Because in that way, the GM knows probably more about the plot and the setting than the player, and if the player was uncertain, then the GM can certainly put them right.
Yeah, so for something like a survival game, I think definitely having a couple of stats that don't really have anything to do with rolling. They're just durability, health and stamina, and you just have them tick down at whatever rate you want them to tick down at. I think once per turn or once per thing you're doing makes a lot of sense, but that's how I put it into a survival game. I think Wally was a really good one to pick. That's probably Pixar game.
Wally is, it
lends you the most to a survival sort of atmosphere.
Aesthetic, yes.
Yeah.
What happens if no skill is appropriate?
Ooh.
Do you just pick the one that's most close?
What's an example?
Here,
Wally, you have to seduce the robot to give you back the plant.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, it's a technical skill. You're seducing another robot. You need to know how it works.
I guess as the GM, you just wouldn't present challenges like that. You want ones that apply to, the skills involved. And besides, I don't know.
Wouldn't that be somewhat restrictive as to what happens in the adventure? Plus, that would restrict the players in terms of how they deal with the issue.
If you want an adventure with, seducing robots instead, I guess you swap out
Which,
one
of course,
the stats.
I do.
Yes. You want to fuck them robots.
I do. Let's face it, it's the future.
Yeah,
I am a robosexual, ladies and gentlemen.
At the end of the day, most of the skills people will probably choose are going to be of a generic nature. You'd have to be pretty specific to not be able... I think you'd have to have quite specific skills to not be able to fit them into anything. With seduction in our Wally world, then you put it into technical skill.
Wow, that's a brand new sentence.
Seduction in Wally world.
Seduction in Wally world. Wow, you've never heard that before.
Well, you got your technical skill because your Wally robot needs to know how the other robot works.
It needs to know where it goes.
Exactly, what to plug in where, if you know what I mean.
I do.
So, and that's a feat of technical engineering or technical know-how.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty much a mechanic that lets you come up with a whole game, and you want particular things to be in it. Like I said before, if you want BMX racing, I don't know anything about that, but maybe there's specific skills you could bring into that.
Handlebar flip.
Yes. Popping an ollie.
Yeah, maybe one of your...
Shit talking. And you could have stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe one of your skills is sweet tricks, bro.
Sweet tricks, bro.
So this allows you to be quite specific with skills or quite broad with skills. So if you know you're going to have an adventure that involves, as you say, BMXing, you can make sure the skills are specific.
BMXing, but with seduction mechanics to get other parts, something like that. And so you just, create the stats, and then it's up to the GM to make sure the story moves.
Doesn't that require the GM to... Because this strikes me as a mechanic that would lend itself extremely well to a game where you just sit down and bash it out just immediately without having to
make it
think
up as you go.
Yeah, but
you
in
definitely
this case,
could.
the GM needs to have an idea of where the story is going.
What if every player had different skills? What if you came up with a setting and a character and just gave yourself...
Or you could have 5 set ones and a random one. Instead of tech skill, you could have something else. Instead of, you being a robot that's good at fixing other robots, you could be, I don't know. What's another thing? You can set fires.
Yeah,
something like that.
Arson. And that would allow that. If you had some flexibility between different players, that would allow even greater customization and characterization.
Yeah. So taking it away from the Wally one, you got 5 that have to be the same for everyone, and then one that's player choice or something like that.
Do you see what I've got an idea for this? Where if you've got a bunch of players and you tell them, okay, cool, think of 6 skills that would be appropriate in this particular setting and with this particular like story in mind. You're in the Wild West and you're going to be robbing a stagecoach. Write down 6 skills, and each of them do it secretly, right? So one person might write down chutzpah, another one might write down shooting, another one person might write down dynamite, another person might write down charm and deception and all that. Once that happens, you all get to go and say, well, I guess kind of like chutzpah and constitution are kind of the same thing, so we'll just amalgamate those, and you kind of negotiate what skills you have and you share those out. But you still have some players that maybe only one person put down dynamite and they're like, no, I want to stick with dynamite. They get the dynamite skill.
They're the demolition expert.
So it's not even necessarily just one arbitrary skill that everyone gets. It's like a collaborative character creation mechanic where it's not just like you don't have just strength, dexterity, constitution, blah blah blah. You do get a certain amount of freedom in terms of customizability.
Yeah.
But you are customizing it as the group as a whole.
Yeah, so you're thinking like GM comes up with the type of story they want to tell, then when you turn up to play it, you'll create the characters and stats together
at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
And as an interesting approach to character, a collaborative character creation mechanic. I've not really seen that before.
To the point of stats. Like you get people who will consider, in a traditional tabletop RPG, they will consider, okay, this guy is like the guy who takes the hits, so we don't need another one of those. We should probably have a cleric or like a healer or some description. But with this, that never comes down to specific stats.
Yes, it comes down to roles. This
method comes down to
the stat level.
The actual, down to the fundamental, what's the word? The fundamental makeup of the group. That's customized. Not just, I'm the elf that has a sad past. It's like, we're the group that is very, very good at shooting because we've all decided that's a useful skill to have or an appropriate skill to have.
I like it.
Yeah.
It also makes it easier for the GM.
True. But of course, we have... It sounds like in order for this to fit this survival genre, it's just going to come down to the GM setting that as the genre. So it's not so much a survival.
Well, with the creation one, you could easily have the GM say, okay, we've got fatigue in this one. You're going to be keeping track of fatigue. This is how the rules work for fatigue. You lose this much every time you do this, and every game block you also lose an extra one.
So this isn't so much a survival game, but it could be if you chose it to be.
Yeah, I want to have it very, very open, but then have an example which can be a survival game. Yeah. That makes sense?
I think, definitely. I think it's, I think it does lend itself particularly well to a survival game because survival genres, as anyone who enjoys the genre knows, they tend to be a little bit similar.
They can be quite samey, yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool, you've made a stone axe and you're going to chop down that tree. That's like...
All right, mate, I feel attacked.
That's like 15 fucking games right there in one go.
Yeah, if you want to do a survival game based on Wall-E, you're not going to be, crafting necessarily. You're going to be looking for fuel. You need to break into a place.
Yeah, totally. But what I mean by that is... In those kinds of games, in that kind of genre, there tends to be a lot of overlap. So if someone might say, like, the group at the table is their collaborative designing, maybe a lot of them put down crafting as an intrinsic mechanic because they know that the game is going to be survival. Or maybe they put down swimming because they know that that's an integral part of survival. So it gives the GM and the story a very solid idea of what kind of setting that they want to be in.
Or if you want to do, I don't know, pirate or water-based survival, something like swimming probably will come up really easily. Survival, swimming, fishing, UR, which can be a stat. How well you communicate with other pirates.
That's just called Yorkshire stat.
How Yorkshire are you?
Rum consumption, that's the one that depletes over time.
Just consumption.
Yeah, whatever. A pirate survival game where the resource that depletes is rum, and if you get to the bottom of the rum, there's a mutiny.
That's quite good.
You're describing that shitty new game from the Ark Survival devs.
Atlas,
that's it.
You mean Ark Pirates Evolved.
Ark Pirates Evolved. I love it. Ark Pirates Evolved.
See, if you want to make that into an RPG, you just do it. Just jump in.
Honestly, we've discussed this mechanic so quickly. I mean, do we want to jump into just create a game and do a real fast scenario?
We did just create Wall-E, the survival RPG. You saw how easy that was. We could just do it. I do have one I bought before.
This is an infomercial. Yes. You saw how easy that was.
But wait, there's more.
You're gonna love my nuts. Let's go.
Cool. I have already created another one. It's not a survival one. It's a type of game with a scenario I've been wanting to do
Did you
for a
not get
while.
the memo that this was a survival genre one?
You do have to survive in this game. If you
Okay.
die, that's not good for the game.
Okay.
But in that sense,
That's not quite
in
what
that,
I
in
meant.
that sense, all RPGs are a survival
Yes,
game.
exactly. All games are survival
Yeah.
games.
Are there any games where the goal is to die? There's that weird one which is like a 2-player game where it's a baby trying to kill itself, and you have to stop the baby from killing
Yeah, I
itself.
know the one you mean.
Well, I mean,
That's not a survival game.
your game last episode didn't involve death at all, with the exception of Guy Fieri. Fieri? I've already forgotten.
And that unfortunate,
first
my
time you got it
unfortunate
right.
clone.
Exactly, yeah. So, you can have RPGs without death.
It's
I mean,
called,
this isn't really
there
related
does a
to the
murder
point.
in the title. I'm not sure it didn't have
mean,
much death.
We're also getting very off topic. I apologize.
Anyway,
for
we're
bringing it up.
Yes, I've created a game. I've also got another mechanic that goes on top of this other mechanic, which
Double mechanic all
Yeah.
the way.
I think you'll like it because it creates balance. It works. So, the game I created using my mechanic is a Willy Wonka based RPG called
Okay.
Oompa Loompa Dumpity Death.
You
unfortunately
made the fucking title before the game, didn't you?
No, I didn't. You can't prove that. Anyway, so you lucky few have got the golden tickets.
Wow.
You're part of
We
a
got a
team
golden
of-
ticket.
Yeah, and you have arrived in Wonka's factory. The tour has begun. Wonka has had to step out in his Wonkavator, and all hell has broken loose. There is a special candy virus
Oh no.
running through, which turns living things into candy and turns candy into living organisms.
Ooh.
Fuck.
Yeah, so your goal is to minimize your exposure to the virus and also get through to the end and escape Wonka's factory, in essence.
Right. Okay. Do we
Yeah.
want to do the collaborative creation thing and just write down 6?
we
Or is
could.
that going to fuck with your thing?
I'll show you mine and we can change it because it needs some specificity. So, I have got hacking, patisserie, weight, acrobatics, strength, and fortitude. And these are my stats. Hacking. Are have you both watched or read Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Yes.
This
Yes.
is Linux. I know this.
What Mike TV in that? His whole thing is he's a tech kid. In the Tim Burton one, he basically hacks Wonka's system and figures out where his golden ticket is. So he just goes and buys it. And his thing in that is he is very into TV and technology. So hacking makes sense for that one.
Right.
That
So, yeah,
specific character.
This is sort of vaguely based on the character's already presence in the Wonka world and skills that make sense in the Wonkaverse.
I don't like Wonkaverse. Can we not call it that?
The Willyverse?
That's way better. Yes.
Very well. In the Willyverse, then weight, which makes a lot of sense. Augustus Gloop is a big fat guy, and so I feel like that made sense to have it as some kind of stat
Sure.
that you can use. Maybe you can smash candies to, drop them into a machine to clog the machine. Something like that. No idea. Acrobatics, just because I thought that would be useful.
Yes.
No particular reason. We can change this one very easily. Strength, which I just wanted to include again. It's a useful thing. Patisserie, I felt made a lot of sense. How good are you at crafting with chocolate? I want to turn this nerd rope and, belay my friends down this chocolate cliff.
I thought patisserie was baking and stuff.
I thought it was pastries.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. What's the word for someone good with chocolate then?
Chocolatier.
That's what it is, but what's your skill as a chocolatier?
Chocolatier.
Choctology.
Okay, choctology.
Yes.
Hacking, weight, acrobatics, strength, and choctology.
When you're 50, you have to go for a mandatory choctology to maintain your insurance.
You got to get them at least once a year.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, this will be instead of the one where we all come together and make up our stats as we go. But it'll still be, you can present on a character who's, a fat hacker and, not very good with
Fat
their
with a
hands.
PH.
Or a
Yeah,
hack
so
fatter.
high weight, high hacking, low patisserie, low acrobatics, that sort of thing. Cool. And you just trade your stats around to what you want. And then what I did, I had a whole bunch of if statements for if one stat is this high, another stat has to be lower. For example,
that's
if your
interesting.
weight is if your weight is equal to or greater than 6, acrobatics cannot be greater than 4, because it doesn't make sense if you're a massive fat guy, you're not going to be as good at acrobatics.
Unless it's an anime and you're surprised by the speed of the large person.
Yeah, absolutely could.
Is
But
this Wonkame?
Wonka May.
Wonkame.
We're
It's
not
a
doing
new.
well with our Wonka-based puns.
It's a new.
You got things that trade off, so you can sort of drive characters towards choosing particular, archetypes. Like your Augustus Gloop is going to have high weight, probably high strength, but not be acrobatic and stuff like that. So you can create them like that. So these are optional. You can put these requirements in, but again, you could just have it free. You can have a really acrobatic fat dude who's not very strong.
I mean,
what else I have?
I love the idea of total freedom. Because
I do
that's because
too.
I like slightly game-breaking characters.
I do too. This is more of a thought experiment on my own of what game can I come up with very, very quickly?
Sure.
And how can I balance out the stats and things in a way that makes sense for the story? What else do I have? If your patisserie or choctology, if your choctology is greater than 6, your weight must be equal to or greater than 5. Because if you make a lot of stuff with chocolate, you're probably going to be fat.
Never trust a thin chef.
Yeah, there we go. If hacking is greater than 6, strength must be equal to or lower than 4. Because if you hack a lot, you're probably not going to be at the gym getting strong. That
You
kind
don't
of
know
thing.
my
A lot of
life.
stereotypes
No, I
here.
don't.
You
But
know my name, not my story.
I wasn't trying to get personal. We clearly made it
You
personal.
fucking did.
I also put max stat as 9, because then 10 is you lose no matter what. Because if you can just max out, you can succeed on everything.
Sure.
That's the problem. Having a maximum is important in the trades. I did write down here items can increase stats. I forgot that I wrote that down.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I still claim it as my idea.
What was the last one? Oh, strength minus weight cannot be greater than 2.
This is
so
maths.
strength and weight are quite linked. So I'll come up with a bunch of rules, but you could just have the top one.
You never
and make it
encountered
up.
one of those really skinny, wiry old men that can lift a skip above their head, have you?
You do an anime in Wonka,
Wonka man.
In Wonka, Willy Wonka comes out. He looks like he's rake thin. He rips off his suit for the final battle, and it's just like,
Yeah.
That's like literally Willy Wonka's entrance in the original movie, as he comes out as a frail old man, and then he does a forward roll.
and then he's
everyone's
like,
"Oh my
"Spring!"
god, he's amazing!" I never got that. That's not that impressive.
No, I could do that. I could
Yeah.
do that right now.
Who
Bring in the wheelchair! Bring it in!
Like, who can't do a
Then
forward
you just
roll? That was
cut
never
to
that impressive.
ambulance sirens.
Absurd. So yeah, that was the game I created, because these are sort of things, I wanted to experience in a Willyverse, in my Willyverse game.
What do you want to experience?
But
in
yes,
the
we could have
Willyverse?
anything else. Tell you what, let's go Willyverse.
Well, it should be a Willyverse survival game.
Cool. Let's build a Willyverse survival
Let's
game.
build a
in that case.
Willyverse survival game.
Do we want to go with the candy virus still?
I like, because you get that's kind of survival
Yeah.
horror.
Yeah, the sort of thing I was imagining was sort of a series of rooms and challenges you have to get through. You're at the Chocolate River, you're at the Mike TV bit, blah, 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 blah. You have to move through them, and at the end of each room, you basically top yourself up with strength against the virus. But we could change that.
I like the idea of like zombified Oompa Loompas
Yeah.
running at you going, and you're like, oh my god, they're not dancing anymore.
Tiny and terrifying.
Ba-doop-a-dee.
That's,
Love it.
Yeah. Cool. So what are our stats going to be for something that's a survival game based on this?
Speed, I think, is
Definitely
gonna
speed.
Running away from the Oompa Loompas?
Yeah.
Speed. I think like resistance, like disease resistance. That could be something that ticks down.
Are you
Yep.
sure? You're
So that's one of your ones that you don't roll anything for. It just ticks down.
Just ticks down. Yeah.
okay. I think we still need Choctology in here.
Yeah, because
yes,
it's
Choctology's
too
good.
good.
Choctology must be in here.
Choctology. Cool.
Yeah.
Resistance, speed, choctology. I think like strength. I think general strength.
Are we just
is a good
repeating?
one.
Yeah, we're kind of just repeating this one.
Well, that's fine. Let's just keep going. Let's keep going. We'll try to be more imaginative. So if not, if we're a bunch of kids, maybe strength's not appropriate. Maybe we're all just a bunch of piss weak children.
Yeah, you have to get past challenges
So
in
maybe
different
we
ways.
need
Maybe make it very, very heavily crafting based. Trap
Adorability.
Durability?
Adorability.
Cuteness.
How would you see that being applied in the Willyverse?
Don't eat me,
Please don't eat me, yeah.
just an orphan boy.
Okay, so you got some really adorable Charlie Bucket ones, and then some, super unadorable ones.
Augustus Gloop.
Oh, well, he's got nice chubby cheeks, but he's less adorable than Charlie Buckets.
Okay.
Maybe-
So, yeah.
Singing. There's a lot of singing.
That's quite good.
There's a lot of singing.
Maybe you have to, infiltrate the Oompa Loompas.
Yeah, instead
You
of
have to-
walking down the street,
You have to
be a
pretend you're one of
zombie.
them. Oh, the disease is like a singing disease where you get drawn into the song.
Yeah.
And then you dance away with the Oompa Loompas.
I like it.
Like
I
what
like it.
was it the dancing disease? like medieval Europe.
Oh yeah, I know them one. I think it was literally called the dancing disease, where people just dance themselves to death.
Wow.
Yeah. And they just seem to be contagious, and they just dance in the streets until they died from
We like to be
exhaustion.
educational here at Idiots 3.
Okay, so there we go. It's a singing disease.
Okay, so we need sing.
Sing. Not sure how that's going to come in yet, but we'll
Figure it out. And maybe something to do with your intelligence, some kind of witty type.
That could be player choice. That's the player choice one.
Okay, leave it open, free.
What are some options for that though? So like Mike TV would have some kind of intelligence.
Some wit, yeah.
Int. There we go.
Int.
Weight, I think that is actually
Weight's pretty good.
important because there are a
Yeah,
bunch
because
of
then
kids get big and get small. Stealth,
stealth. Yep.
stolen.
Yeah,
drinks.
You stole fizzy lifting drinks. That makes sense. You could sneak in, get the lifting drinks, soar over your enemies.
Alternative could be something like sleight of hand. So you can, like,
I think
theft.
stealth. I think stealth would fall into sleight of hand. pretty
Yeah, you like if you get an
Sleight of
overlap
hand
with
form
that,
of
you
stealth,
can.
right?
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, you see how we create the stats really, really quickly.
We
Then
did.
We sort of be
We
up to
did.
the GM to see how much they each come into us, or if you come up with a really weird way of getting past the challenge, like I'm going to sing my way out of this one.
How?
So the venomous flowers are going to attack us. I'm going to try and sing and get them to, distract them so the others can get through. We'll get them to sway in the breeze. I'm going to try and put this, big chocolate Rottweiler to sleep with my ballads.
I love it.
I'm going to pump everyone up with my also other kind of power ballads.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's how I mentioned
No
it.
further comment on that one.
Yeah, I've got no further comment. It seems like seeing it in action, it's nice to see that collaborative thing, like not even necessarily just coming up with your own, but just talking about it and saying, okay, this is what we're going to have.
The discussion I enjoyed. Yeah, I mean,
one.
because it also allowed us to slightly amend your original setting in that suddenly it became a singing virus, and that's so much more sort of appropriate for the setting.
Yeah.
It's a really fun skill to
It
use.
gives people it one of the things that's quite a common issue with tabletop RPGs is that and it's a very common thing for DMs to forget to do is to talk about what kind of campaign they're about to run. So people often forget to say, hey, look, this game is going to involve this, this, and this. It might include themes of this, this, and this. Like, are you comfortable with that? Is that something that you sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun? I will enforce, like, weight things, so you can't carry everything all the time. I will enforce that. Does that still sound like fun? It's a negotiation to make sure everyone's enjoying themselves.
It also means you don't create a character that's going to be inappropriate for the world. Someone who's amazing at, I don't know, sewing, but you never pick up a sewing needle in the entire game.
And it's sick. It's stupid to have that as like one of your 6 skills.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. I just want to sum up. So we did create a survival game there, but mostly it's just the mechanic of very quick player as well as game creation that's communal and gives everyone a voice in a sort of way, and then just a way to balance it to make sure you're not just maxed out in different things.
It's good. I like it.
And really simple. Only 1 die, so there's not a whole bunch of different ones to keep track of.
I think it'd be interesting to play it and get the stats in action and see them all working. Because you might encounter some weird balance stuff, but it's probably going to be a lot of fun anyway. Such is the nature of one-shots, where they're often a bit weird and unbalanced, but still fun.
Yeah.
And it's fast to set up, and I think that's a real positive thing.
Simple, very customizable.
Very customized.
Can be anything you want.
Do you have any final statements other than that?
Give me points, Jack.
Okay.
Please.
I will take that into consideration. Grand. I think we are ready for the big reveal.
Points. I want points.
And you know what points mean. Points mean nothing. Let's do it, guys.
I want more nothing than AJ.
What, you want more nothing?
Yeah, because I won in episode 1, and I just feel like I need to retain my crown. Yes.
I want exactly double the nothing that Duncan gets.
Exactly double the
2 times
nothing.
Yes.
2 times nothing, double the nothing. Hey,
as long as I have
chair,
more.
we got a double nothing over here. Right, okay, let's do the thing. So I'm going to do the same thing as Duncan did, which is revealing the
Okay.
each one at set.
I mean, unoriginal, but that's okay.
I'm going to knock points off
Please
you.
don't.
So I'm going to start with Oxidised Metal. What was the name of your one?
I didn't come up with a name for the mechanic, but let's just call my one Oompa Loompa Dumpity Death. Or
Oompa Loompa
Willyverse.
Dumpity Death.
Willyverse.
Willyverse.
I like
Okay, cool.
Willyverse.
So, starting with Oxidised Metal, novelty. So, novelty, I gave it a... This was a tough one, because it's as a whole, like the idea, it's pretty done to death. Like the whole idea, like, oh, okay, cool, you go into the forest, you knock down a tree, and
You mean like the survival genre?
yeah, like the survival genre. I was looking for a little bit of originality.
No,
However,
that's not what you get. You get satire from me. I don't come up with new ideas.
just knocking more and more points off the more he interrupts me. Okay.
Duncan, word of advice: keep talking shit to Jack.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did very much enjoy the kind of the random, not random, but the actual mechanics of it were pretty new, and I haven't heard that kind of idea before. And with a little bit of work with the addition of like the tables to make it easier for the GM, it does work quite nicely. The original idea, I gave it a 4 out of 10 just because the setting was pretty generic.
What do you mean?
Ooh,
Oxidized
tough
Metal, the post-apocalyptic survival RPG with
Yeah.
base building and raids, is totally original and in no way
Gave it a
based
4.
on something else.
Gave it a 4 actually.
Wait, I thought we were measuring based on the final product rather than the original product.
Oh, are we?
That's what we did last round.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna give it a fucking,
Last episode,
I'm gonna
rather.
give it a 6 then.
Yeah, boy!
Okay, if
2
we're doing
points
it
for
as a
arguing.
finalized one, I have to change everything, so I'm going to making this up on the fly. Okay, cool. I gave for the Willyverse. I
So
gave
fucking mature.
after we worked on it, I gave it a 6 as well
Ooh.
for novelty.
Neck and neck.
In terms of like the actual base idea of you get stats and you get to assign points to stats, that's pretty normal. And the fact that it wasn't necessarily strictly survival genre knocked you back a couple of points as well. Fun. Oxidized Metal got a 7 because it sounds super fucking fun to do. I feel like it could easily get bogged down in like realism kind of arguments though among the players. Well, bone actually has a durability higher than that of stone, and you could really easily get into like issues with that.
I think you just need, players who aren't nitpicks.
I think you
and-
need a good GM as well to just keep control and just who's willing to be like, stop talking. This is what it is.
Yeah, yep.
The Willyverse idea also got a 7 because it was like that collaborative design was fun, like actually having that discussion describing what your players would actually do, and the ability of just like rolling it, it goes, that's it, it's done, you get on with it, you get to have more fun instead of doing maths.
Yep.
Design for Oxidized Metal, I gave it an 8 because it was simple, but it got the point across well enough. Like, okay, cool. You create this thing, you add your character skill. Is it suitable? Is it not suitable? Sweet. You get a D6 plus whatever your character skill is. That's like really easy to do, and you can do it very rapidly. The Willyverse got a 4 for design. Because it's
so simple, though.
It's overly simple. It's overly simple. I actually bumped it up from a 3 to a 4 after I saw you added in the additional rules.
Yeah,
it bumped it up again, but prerequisites are not exactly like they could easily fall into too much math problem again.
Yeah, but there's the thing, if you want lots of customizability, you have to, have I don't know.
Simplify.
I went down a very simple route. It didn't pay off. I get it.
And finally, for the customizability section, Oxidized Metal got a 9.
Hey.
Literally 1 point knocked off simply because of a lot of the work we as a group did to kind of nail down everything. I know we were supposed to do it on the final product, but a 9 overall because nothing's perfect as well.
All right, mate. I mean, all right.
And Willyverse got an 8 for customizability because it's
infinitely customizable.
It is infinitely customizable, but it relies on the GM having a story in mind already, whereas Oxidized Metal doesn't. Like, it has a general setting.
Well, you could always create these stats, then go and create the story out of it. Like, you decide you want a story about something, and
you
then
certainly
create
could,
it.
but you didn't say that during the discussion.
I'm saying it now.
Too late. The points are already awarded. Which leaves Oxidized Metal with a 30, I believe, if my maths is correct, and Willyverse with a 25. Both respectable scores.
Respectable scores.
I would say overall, Oxidised Metal pulled ahead because it was more strictly within the survival genre, rather than Willyverse is sick because you can apply it to a lot of things, but the restriction was survival specifically. Cool.
So basically, I won.
So basically,
Thank you.
Mr. Pacey is the winner. But don't worry, there are plenty more RPGs to be made by these three idiots.
Hello, listeners. This is AJ speaking from his editing grotto to tell you all about our next upcoming episode. But first, a very sincere thanks to everyone who has tuned into these pilot episodes of our show. We had a blast making them and hope you had fun listening. If you did enjoy it, please spread the podcast around, share it with your friends and followers, and if you have a theme or requirement you would like to hear us tackle on the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes along with your suggestion, and we will pick a couple of our favourites over the next few episodes. In the meantime, be sure to tune into episode 3 of Pitch Slap, hosted by your favourite host, and the theme our competitors will be working to is kid-friendly, so the easier their game is for a child to understand and enjoy, the better. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you all again in a few weeks.